Welcome to Becoming Limitless. This is the podcast for entrepreneurs who want to optimize their brain and their body with biohacking. I'm going to teach you how to eliminate brain fog and upgrade your health so you can have more productivity, energy, and growth in your business. I'm your host, Tanessa Shears. Let's jump in. Welcome back to the Becoming Limitless podcast. I had so much fun titling today's episode, No Sugar, No Flour, but what the heck do I eat? This is a question that I asked myself when I first did my very first no sugar, no flour 30-day challenge. And I'm going to be talking to you about that today. But I remember just being like, well, what the heck do you eat if you don't eat sugar and flour? That's all I ate at the time. But I'm going to be telling you about some of my top tricks and hacks on how to find the best recipes and really expand your knowledge and your awareness of the different foods that are available when we reduce the amount of processed foods we are eating. So if we haven't met before, my name is Tanessa Shears. I'm a health consultant and I work specifically with entrepreneurs to help them biohack their brain and their body so we can have more productivity, energy, and growth in our business. I mean, how fun is that? Our productivity is always dependent on our energy, and my job is to give you the tools and the strategies you need to feel energized. And we do that by biohacking your brain. So let's jump into today's episode. So about 5 years ago, I picked up a book called The Obesity Code. And I've talked about this book on the podcast before. It's by Dr. Jason Fung. It was really the book that really opened my eyes to food and what it does inside of our body. And I was learning specifically how, the foods that we eat affect a hormone called insulin and what that does for, losing body fat and gaining body fat and just the overall health of our body. So I was in bed reading one night and I looked over at my husband and I was like, this book is so good. Oh my gosh. Flynn, do you want to do a 30-day challenge where we don't eat any sugar and any flour? And I remember he looked over at me and he goes, if we do that, what the heck are we supposed to eat? So that is the question we are going to be answering on today's podcast. So this all really goes back to an analogy that I learned from Dr. Jason Fung in this book. So He describes it like this. So when we eat food, particularly carbohydrates, we eat it, it goes into our digestive system, the food is broken down, and it enters the bloodstream as sugar, or more commonly known as glucose. You've probably heard the term blood glucose before. That just means the amount of carbohydrate that is broken down into sugar that is in our blood. But the problem is when it accumulates to a certain level, it can become toxic and actually inflammatory to our body. And we've talked about inflammation before, especially as it is one of the main causes of brain fog. So on top of that, glucose is a very easy to access source of fuel for our body. So I want you to think of this analogy. Having glucose available in the blood is like having food available in the fridge. It's really easy for our body to eat up and use as energy. It's really easy to access. There's minimal energy that goes into it. Like all you'd have to do is open the fridge door, pop it into the microwave or heat it up or anything like that. Super easy, right? Well, that's how our body is used to processing sugar that's in the blood. Readily available, easy to access, converts to energy really quickly. Now, I want you to contrast that with, say, food that's in your freezer right now. So let's say you have a big piece of wild salmon in your freezer right now. It's frozen, right? It's not, you can't just walk into your freezer and then take a bite out of the salmon. It's hard to access. You need to thaw it, and then you need to cook it, and then it's available for you to put in the fridge and use. This is actually how our body treats body fat. So if you've never given your body a reason to go into the freezer and use up body fat as fuel, it'll always rely on food in the fridge. So basically what we're saying is if there's always blood glucose available for that short-term, easy access energy, your body will never have a reason to actually dive into body fat, start breaking it down and using it as fuel. So the process of your body actually learning to go into the freezer or to use body fat as fuel, this is what I call becoming fat adapted. Your body, when it's fat adapted, can easily switch between burning glucose as needed and burning body fat when it's needed. So right now, if you eat a diet that is very high in simple carbohydrates, lots of sugar, lots of flour, you're eating multiple times throughout the day, there's a very good chance that your body is relying strictly on blood glucose most of the time to keep your energy up. But what I want is I want my body to be able to tap in. And one of the wonderful analogies that I heard, and one of my mentors, Brooke Castillo, actually said that she loves the idea of dining in on some of that body fat that we have sitting around that is full of calories and provides us the energy we need. It's that ability to dine in. So when we go to actually use that fat and break it down, it's released from the cell, and a fat molecule breaks down into 3 little fatty acids and 1 glycerol molecule. So you don't need to remember these terms, but it is kind of fun to know. So the body uses that glycerol backbone and metabolizes it into something called ketone bodies. Now, the word ketone bodies has actually been made really popular by the keto diet, because the point of doing a keto diet is to reduce carbs down so low that your body actually produces these ketone bodies from the glycerol molecule that comes from a fat. This is actually quite a normal process that happens in the majority of people, even if they're not on a super carb low diet. So an example would be overnight when you have dinner and you don't eat again until the next morning. Your body will naturally deplete its blood sugar stores and start tapping into body fat to tie us over in the morning. This also happens during certain diets, like we talked about with ketones and doing keto. And it also happens during fasting, or if there is a longer break between meals. Like, your body has that capacity to access that stored fat. So the theory is, if we want to teach the body to access fat, we need to let the fridge run low on food. So that means we need to let the blood sugar get to the point where we need our body to tap into that body fat. And that means for us not eating processed foods for 30 whole days. So processed foods are foods that are usually really high in sugar and flour and trans fats. And sugar and flour specifically are the 2 groups in the carbohydrate spectrum that I've talked about before that actually spike our blood glucose or our blood sugar levels the most. So here are actually a quick couple of ways to tell if your body relies on food that's in the fridge or the freezer. So meaning blood glucose or body fat. So if you get hangry often, meaning, if you haven't had a meal in a couple hours, you start getting grumpy and irritable and angry. If this is you, even if it's only been a couple hours, you're likely just experiencing a blood sugar dip, and your body doesn't have that capability to easily transition to tapping into fat. Another way to tell is if you're eating every 2 to 3 hours all day long. And if you don't, like say you have to wait 5 hours, you feel lightheaded, or you get carbohydrate cravings. Another way to tell is if you go too long between meals, say if it's been more than 3 or 4 hours, you way overeat at your next meal because you just can't control yourself. Or you have very intense food cravings, or you have unstable energy all day long, especially around your meals. So for example, you'll feel pretty stable energy throughout the morning, and then after lunch, you'll get a little bit of an energy rush and then a really hard crash. And then it'll stay low until dinner, and then you'll get these rises and falls all day. And the other way to tell is you may be struggling to maintain a healthy body weight. So what this might tell us is if your body's not able to access fat, you're always going to be eating food based on filling up the blood with blood sugar really quickly, and that's going to be usually those processed foods. So at the time when I read this book and we decided to do this 30-day challenge, I was a yes to several of those. I had to eat every 2 to 3 hours. I got hangry. I had food cravings all the time, and I had energy crashes mid-afternoon, usually around that 2 p.m. point. So this was like, yes, this was me. I didn't even know there was another option for this. So from there, we set out to actually knock out sugar and flour for 30 days, and we did it. But it wasn't easy. The first 2 weeks, they dragged. Oh my gosh. And I always warn my clients about this. I tell them, like, this first couple of weeks, you just have to understand that it is going to be a challenge. It is something new for your body. I was so cranky in those first 2 weeks, and I had food cravings, and I felt like I was missing out. And I felt bored more often because I didn't realize how often I was using that satiating food with sugar and flour to actually make me more entertained in my own home at the end of the day. And I really started noticing this. And there obviously is a reduction in the total amount of carbohydrates. Like if you go from eating sugar and flour all the time and pull that out, until you start to adjust and adapt to the other foods available to you, you're likely going to notice a carb reduction. So at that point, I noticed I needed to drink a lot more water, and going through that carbohydrate withdrawal was one of the most challenging things. Like it's literally a dopamine detox. That reward you get from eating those like simple sugars, your brain needs to detox off of that, and you'll find that you'll actually get the mood swings and the irritability, and this is totally normal. Nothing has gone wrong, and it doesn't mean you should quit. So the other thing that I really love about pulling out sugar and flour, and it always comes up in the first 2 weeks, is all of your drama comes up. And this is what I love doing in my work with clients. I pull out sugar and flour not only so that we can, reset the body, reset the hormones, set our body to a place where it is whole food so we can, think clearly. But I like to pull up all their drama. I like when I start hearing clients associate food with entertainment and making them feel better and making them less sad, or helping them when they feel bored or when they're emotional and they go to eat. Like when you pull out food as a source of entertainment, what happens is all the emotions that you were suppressing by eating, whether that be boredom or loneliness or sad or frustrated or overwhelmed, all of those come up to the surface. And that is a beautiful thing, because now we get to coach on it and we get to work on it and change your relationship with food so that you no longer have to eat the food in order to make the feelings go away. You just learn how to manage your emotional life. It is such a beautiful part of the process that I find is one of the most unexpected benefits. So that's usually the first 2 weeks, but the next 2 weeks, they flew by. So we made it to the end. We barely even thought about sugar and flour in those last 2 weeks because our body had adapted. But I want to share with you what we experienced from doing 30 days of no sugar, no flour. Like we can now comfortably go 4 to 5, even 6 hours without eating and without freaking out. Meaning if I know I'm not going to be able to get a meal for an hour longer than I expected, I don't freak out and stash 10 almonds in my mouth just so I don't overeat later. Like that relationship with food has entirely changed. I don't need to snack nonstop throughout the day in order to feel okay. I don't miss that that freaking out, like I was saying, that I thought, food is an emergency, and if I can't get it now, and I would pack emergency snacks, and I would eat emergency meals before I left the house just in case I had to be out too long. All of that has gone away, because what I've learned is that I'm okay if it needs to be an extra hour. I have body fat that my body can dine in on. I'm going to be okay. It's not going to be as uncomfortable as it would have been had I been eating processed carbs the whole time. So I also found that we had much fewer and much less intense food cravings, which was a win. We both experienced weight loss to the point where our body fats got down to what we feel for us was healthy weight maintenance. So it was kind of just a really nice place of my body felt good. The inflammation levels in our body came down. One of the most fascinating things was my husband at the time had a recurring shoulder injury that was always inflamed. And by the end of the 30 days, his shoulder injury had actually completely subsided. Now, I'm not saying that going no sugar, no flour is going to heal joint issues, but if it leads to inflammation, and inflammation is what is going on in a painful joint, definitely cleaning up the processed foods is going to make you feel better, whether it completely eliminates it or reduces it. Anything that can contribute to a healthier feeling body and, a body in less pain is a wonderful thing. And the last thing we noticed is that we had stable energy. So just from the time we woke up to the time we went to bed, everything felt just smooth. We weren't fighting with those ups and downs, and I wasn't having to rely on coffee to kind of keep my energy stable throughout the day. So why does pulling out sugar and flour and just really taking inventory of the type of carbohydrate we are eating matter as an entrepreneur? Well, one of the first things we have to do with our nutrition to have a high performance brain is to balance our blood sugar. And this is my favorite way to do it. Now, it goes without saying that you want to consult your doctor or the medical professional you might be working with if you want to make any changes to your nutrition or diet program. But if you've decided, I want to try 30 days of no sugar, no flour, you might be left in the exact same boat we were in. Great. But what the heck is left to eat if you pull out sugar and flour? Because before this, for breakfast, we used to have cereal, toast, and bagels. So which is basically sugar and flour, flour, and some more flour. For lunch, we always had a sandwich or a wrap of some kind. So mine was usually like mustard and mayo and cheese and ham. Not really any nutrition at all. And I'd usually finish things off with a very high sugary flavored zero fat yogurt and an apple and a granola bar. So just all types of carbs on carbs on carbs. Dinner then usually ended with like a pasta or tortellini with, garlic bread. We'd have fajitas and maybe like a protein source and maybe like one type of vegetable. Like this is how we used to eat because the households we grew up in, this was the way that, food was presented to us. And it was literally all we ate. And the result of this 30-day challenge is one of my favorite things that goes just beyond balanced blood sugar is learning what real food is and how many options there are. I mean, I'm talking about vegetables and grains that you may have never even heard of before or explored because chances are you've been eating the same 5 to 6 vegetables over and over again and just a ton of flour and maybe rice. And I find that's about the extent of our knowledge of what real food is when it comes to these categories. I mean, I was taught that growing up that your plate, if you looked at it, you should basically see a little bit of veggies, a little bit of protein, and a bunch of carbs. And if you weren't filling it with pasta, well, then what? So there's actually so many healthy, complex carb options available. In the rice category alone, you could have brown rice, black rice, red rice, white rice. There's actually a type of rice even called wild rice. It's not really rice, it's actually a seed, but quinoa is an option that's also a seed. You can look at options like buckwheat or amaranth or millet or teff or sorghum. I mean, there are so many grains available to us that will serve that complex carbohydrate component of our meals. And I mean, if you're looking for a carbohydrate, other whole food sources can be things like black beans and kidney beans and baked beans and lima beans. So I want you to hear when I say this. When you choose to do no sugar or no flour, you don't have to go low carb. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions when I say, hey, no sugar, no flour. People just think it means keto or low carb. You can have carbs, but you don't have to have carbs. The point is that there are options available for you to enjoy carbohydrates that are going to be a lot better inside your body, especially when it comes to balancing your blood sugar. Carbohydrates come in so many things besides the options that I just told you about. I mean, carbohydrates are also in fruit. Carbohydrates are also in vegetables. But the point is, these are more of a complex carbohydrate source, and you can tell because they have a lot more fiber. Why this is important is because it slows down how fast the glucose or the sugar is released into your blood. This is important so that you don't get that massive spike in blood sugar followed by that massive drop, because when you are constantly massively spiking and massively dropping your blood sugar, you get glycemic variability, meaning that level of sugar is going up and down, up and down. And this is one of the leading causes of brain fog. So I wanted to give you some of my favorite no sugar, no flour meal options that are tried and true in our household. And I often am passing on to clients and they fall in love with them as well. So for breakfast, this is the number one place people get stuck, because when we look at our breakfast, most of the time it's like bagel or cereal or some kind of granola, or, you're looking at some kind of wrap. We're just so used to eating carbohydrates at breakfast that we don't even aren't able to see that there are other options. So really good options for breakfast. You could think of something like this: 2 eggs and half an avocado. This is the current breakfast that I'm eating on a daily basis. You can also include oatmeal with chia seeds and flax seeds, maybe topped with a cup of mixed berries. So much fiber in there, healthy fats, a little bit of protein. That is a great whole food option. You can also look at making egg cups. So you make them kind of like in a muffin tin, and you crack some eggs in there, and you maybe put in some spinach and peppers and onions and stuff like that, so that they're all prepped ahead of time, and just toss them in the microwave. Another option might be like what I call like a healthy breakfast hash. So think of things like sweet potatoes and peppers and mushrooms and eggs and green onions all kind of tossed together to make like a hash. Chia pudding is another one that I know a lot of clients have been a fan of. Another good one is coconut yogurt. with chia seeds and almond butter and like half of a banana and maybe even some blueberries in there. So it's kind of like a bowl. Ooh, this is a good one. And the other one that we have used before is actually just a BLT lettuce wrap. So you toss in, a bit of bacon, some lettuce, a tomato if you like that, and you wrap it up in some lettuce. There are so many options that you can have for breakfast that don't have sugar and flour in them. There are so many recipes that have delicious foods in them. I'm going to give you my top 5 favorite recipes for lunches and dinners, and I've actually included the link in the show notes to the exact recipe so that you can steal it and start cooking it this week. So number 1 is a taco salad bowl. Picture exactly what you would eat in a taco, but then dump it in a bowl and mix it up. It is so good. I always like to warm mine up. It's great. It's so tasty. I absolutely love it. The second one is actually a dynamite shrimp sushi bowl. So it's literally like you've gone for sushi, except it's now in a bowl. So we home make our own dynamite shrimp sauce using avocado mayo. So it's a little healthier for you. And then we add in things like shrimp and cucumbers and peppers and all of that kind of stuff. And it's so delicious. Our third option that we love is actually getting wild salmon and putting a little bit of basil pesto on it and then baking some green beans. It is so delicious. If you've never had pesto on salmon, it is something you definitely want to try. Another one we really like is Greek chicken bowls. So we actually make the chicken in whole fat Greek yogurt. It is delicious. And then we just make a Greek salad on the side and we toss it all up. So good. This last recipe I actually don't have a link for. It's a recipe that I get at a restaurant called Cactus Club here in Vancouver. It's called the Rain Coast Greens Salad. So I do know what the ingredients are in it, and it's a beautiful luscious vegetable-filled salad. It usually has baby greens in there like romaine or arugula or spinach and kale and Swiss chard, all of those things, chopped up cucumbers, chopped up red pepper, feta cheese sprinkled all over the place. If you can get a hold of them, sweet and spicy pecans. Oh, it is one of the most beautiful tasting things in a salad. There's a hard-boiled egg sliced up in there. There's an avocado, which I always get grilled. I love the grilled avocado. It just adds such a nice flavor. There's a little bit of olive oil and lemon juice and balsamic vinegar all mixed together as a dressing. And then lastly, it is topped with Cajun-flavored chicken. So good. Rain Coast Greens Salad from Cactus Club. If you ever are in Vancouver, go check it out. But make sure you get it with the grilled avocado, the Cajun chicken, and swap out the lemon Dijon dressing. It is my go-to at that restaurant. And one of the favorite things I always love to surprise my clients with, which if we ever end up working together down the road, I guess this surprise is kind of spoiled, but I give my clients a recipe board with over 130 no sugar, no flour recipes of like literally the most delicious meals I have ever eaten, because I want to take all the thinking out of it. And so this recipe board is jam-packed. So when I say that there is a lot of food to eat that has no sugar and no flour, I mean it. So here are a couple of the tips that completely changed my recipe awareness and are going to help you find your new favorite recipes for eating no sugar, no flour. Tip number 1 is to learn about a Buddha bowl. This is a term or a type of eating that I had never heard of before, but when I was on my search to try to find something to eat on our no sugar, no flour challenge, I came across a Buddha bowl. And if you've never heard it before, it's a primarily vegetarian meal that's actually served in a single bowl. And it consists of small portions of a whole bunch of different foods. The majority of them are served cold, but I also like warming mine up. So they may include, foods like whole grains such as quinoa, brown rice, plant proteins such as chickpeas, tofu, and a ton of vegetables. So I always like adding a little bit of protein in mine, whether that be, in wild salmon or wild cod or a little bit of chicken. But these are all options that are so delicious. And the variety in Buddha bowls is insane. If you go onto Pinterest, type in Buddha bowl, and you will see the most delicious arrangements of bowls, and they're so beautiful. It is just a really cool way to start exploring different combinations of foods in a really healthy way. Tip number 2 is to keyword search for recipes. So when I go onto somewhere like, for example, Pinterest is where I do a lot of my recipe searching, I'll use words like Whole30 when searching for recipes, or keto, or paleo, or low carb as search terms. And this is not because we are eating keto, paleo, low carb, or anything like that, but because these recipes are more likely to use whole foods. And like we said, I can add in carbs from that larger list that we talked about before, like buckwheat and rice and quinoa and millet and all of those ones. I can add those in. But the problem is, if we search just for like healthy recipes, many of the websites that I have searched will pop up search results with loads of pasta dishes and sandwiches, which might have been healthy to me at some point before, but my definition of healthy continues to evolve, and these things just aren't making the cut anymore for me. So like I said, use those keywords when searching, and then just round out the way you eat with some of those really healthy grains we talked about. Tip number 3, if you go into your fridge and you're like, I have these random whole foods in here. Let's just say you have, let's say chicken, celery, and black beans. And you're like, what the heck do I make with this? So you're going to go on Pinterest and you're going to search for these 3 food items in the search bar. You're going to type in chicken, celery, and black beans. And the crazy thing is, it'll pull up recipes with the exact foods you already have in your fridge. So you don't need to let any foods go to waste. You don't need to go and buy extra foods. I actually did this for fun with the 3 random ingredients I just told you about. And there is a recipe that I pulled up on the website. The website is called Edible Obsession. And it's a chicken and celery dish with black bean sauce. So like I said, I picked 3 random ingredients and there were tons of recipes waiting there for me. Tip number 4, and my final tip for really finding the best recipes, is to keep it simple. If you don't want to do the Buddha bowls and you don't want to search all these recipes, you can just keep it really simple and put one of those whole grains we talked about, a protein, and a vegetable on your plate. While I was writing up the show notes for this episode this morning, I actually looked over at my husband while he was in the kitchen. I said, what do you think of this? What is a tip that you have that you learned from our growth through this no sugar, no flour challenge? And this was his tip. Tell them to eat Flynn's chicken, rice, and asparagus. So Flynn's chicken is actually pretty much just bone-in chicken thighs, but we call that Flynn's chicken because when I was pregnant, I couldn't stand the sight of those things. Chicken just repulsed me while I was pregnant. So I started calling it Flynn's chicken because I couldn't eat it. So it has forever been named Flynn's chicken. So keep it simple without all the fancy recipes was actually his tip. And this is something we also do. So let's say we're planning for 4 recipes for the week. We might actually plan 2 or 3 recipes. And then one of them will just be like a protein and a grain and a vegetable. And we'll keep it super simple like that. Like it doesn't always have to be recipes. The other really neat thing about keeping it simple like this is it saves you money because then you don't end up buying like that one random ingredient for a sauce that you never use ever again. I feel like we've done this with like dill seasoning. You buy it for a recipe and then you don't ever use it again and it pretty much just sits in the cupboard. So those are the 4 tips. Look at Buddha bowls. Use search terms for other diet types and then fill them out with other whole foods. Put the ingredients you have in your fridge into a search bar, or as my husband Flynn says, just keep it simple. I mean, that works too. They all work really well. Now, to make this whole 30-day no sugar, no flour challenge a lot more successful, one of the best things you can do is actually plan and prep your food ahead of time so that you have healthy, simple food available. Because I got to tell you, when you are having a carbohydrate withdrawal attack in those first 2 weeks, where all you want to do is go to the store and get chocolate or just mow down on a whole bunch of toast with peanut butter on it because it would make you feel better. If you have that healthy food prepared ahead of time in the fridge, your only job is to eat it and decide if you still want to eat those other things after. I mean, how often have you been having a really intense craving and then you just ate what you planned and then the craving completely went away? The only way that you can do that and be successful at it is if you have everything planned ahead of time. So just make sure that you're prioritizing that heading into the 30 days. Beyond that, there's pretty much only one rule to keep in mind, and that is my whole foods rule, and it'll really help you decide if something is processed and likely has sugar and flour in it or not. if it came from the ground or had a mother at some point, it's likely a whole food. And I mean, I have a massive list of whole foods that I give my clients so they can discover all of the foods they might have otherwise skipped. Different kinds of leafy greens or beans or seeds or types of protein that our brains don't naturally go to if they're not part of a regular nutritional repertoire. So it's a really neat way to kind of dive in and create your own list. This process allows you to explore other real foods. Now, I want to emphasize that after the 30 days, meaning on a regular basis now, we only eat sugar or flour, I would say 1, maybe 2 days per week. And it's always planned out in advance. So we know ahead of time what day of the week we're going to be eating a little sugar or a little flour. We always keep no sugar and flour during the work week because I want to stay healthy, I want to feel lean, and I want to most importantly be focused and sharp at work. And if I'm constantly clouding my body with sugar and flour during the week and then piling it on top of the weekend, I'm just not performing as well. So like I said, it's not that we do no sugar and flour all of the time. We do it the high majority of the time because it's just a lifestyle we've learned to fall in love with. And like I said, whether you call it a no sugar, no flour or a whole food challenges, there is just a world of food beyond flour and sugar. I mean, food that tastes better, and fruit begins to taste sweeter, and all of those unwanted symptoms like bloat and headaches and that panic eating and energy fluctuations, they all start to subside, and your thinking is clearer, and you feel better, and you really start to show up sharper, and you become a better entrepreneur. I work one-on-one with entrepreneurs at a high level to really help them create a protocol for their nutrition that is personalized and simple and effective, and its purpose is to get them into high performance. And we not only cover whole foods, but how to rotate and cycle them properly so that you don't create sensitivities to food, or that you can find the foods you are sensitive to easier. I also teach them how to meal plan and how to eat for optimized hormone balance. So if you want to optimize your brain and have it performing at peak capacity, you need to be eating in a way that supports that. And my Becoming Limitless program covers exactly this, and I can help you if this is something you need help working on. You can either send me a message on Instagram, or you can email me at Tanessa@TanessaShears.com, and we can set up a consultation. Well, I have absolutely loved sharing all of the wonderful recipes and ways of eating and types of food that we discovered through our own no sugar, no flour journey. If this is something that you decide to implement and decide to post about on Instagram, tag me at Tanessa Shears or send me a message. I always love hearing how you implement everything that you learn from this podcast. If you have found it helpful, please share this with a friend that would find this just as beneficial as you did. I love and appreciate all of the organic sharing that you guys are doing in the podcast. I mean, I found out just this week that we have listeners in over 25 countries. Isn't that crazy? 25 countries. It's so much fun. And it's all because of you sharing and, participating in and helping us grow this podcast community that I'm so proud to be a part of. I appreciate you guys, and I hope you have an absolutely beautiful week. I will talk to you next week. Bye. Ready to begin each day feeling energized and focused? I'd love to work with you one-on-one. In my Becoming Limitless program, you're going to learn how to optimize your brain and body with science and biohacking so you can be highly productive and grow your business faster. Join me over at TanessaShears.com/work with me. I'll see you there.